morning, everybody. Thank you for making time to come join us for this conversation. We have not put a particular focus on China and the China-U.S. strategic relationship the last couple of years at CGSR. We've put a stronger focus on Russia and Russia's strategy towards the West because of a high sense of current risk in Russia's strategy towards the West. China presents a different set of problems, a more long-term competitive challenge than a near-term military problem. China, of course, pursues a comprehensive strategy to shape its security environment in ways it considers consistent with the commitment to the China dream and a certain vision of where China is headed by 2049. Central in China's strategy is thinking about the nature of the necessary relationship in the strategic realm with the United States. And we can't quite say the reverse. We can't quite say that central to American thinking has been the definition of a proper and necessary strategic military relationship with China. We have put our focus elsewhere. We've been clear nationally about the requirements of long-term relationship with Russia in the strategic realm, and clear that we reject, as a matter of principle, mutual vulnerability with rogue states. And in a sense, China's been an afterthought for the American strategic community at a time when America has been the central thought for China's strategic community. And thus there's an opportunity for us to get smarter and to inform policy and strategy development here in the United States as it relates to China. And I'm very grateful to Dr. Wu for coming in to help us take a step down that pathway today. As you know, he's going to talk about China's approach to strategic deterrence, one or two of the key underlying ideas guiding its development of strategy and capability. This is work that he's had underway. This builds on work that he's had underway for a decade or so. Dr. Wu and I first met when he was a graduate student at China's MIT, Tsinghua University, studying under Li Bin, who some of you in the room will know. And this was over a dozen years ago, and he impressed me as a young man of particular clarity of thought and also courage, willingness to speak his mind clearly, and also thoughtful in reacting to the reactions that others have given him. And he's published, well, he's had fellowships at a number of American institutions. We interacted briefly when he was a fellow at CSAC at Stanford in 2011. You also did a fellowship at MIT, is that correct? Yes. And he's currently a visiting fellow at the Belfer Center at Harbin University, where he's writing a paper on the subject of today's talks. He's been one of the closest students of American missile defense policy and capabilities, and one of the best interlocutors in the informal dialogue between our two countries that goes on once or twice a year under the sponsorship on the U.S. side of the U.S. Department of Defense. So you have his detailed biography in front of you. He's agreed to speak for 40 or 45 minutes or so, and if we could, we'll hold questions until the end, and then we'll have 45 minutes or so for Q&A. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Wu Riqiang.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you all for coming. It's my great honor and pleasure to be here. The basic idea of this research is to build a simplified, I would say highly simplified nuclear exchange model to evaluate China's nuclear retaliatory capability. You know, we have seen lots of nuclear exchange models regarding U.S. and Soviet Union or U.S.-Russia, but China not much. So I will try to build a model and hopefully could serve as a starting point for further discussion or dialogues. why I'm doing this. Different people have different evaluations about China's nuclear deterrence. On one side, liberal and press argue China has no deterrence at all because America had a very good counterforce capability. On the other side, Sun Xiangli from China and Taylor Fravell and Ivan Medeiros and Fiona argue China have assured retaliation, which means China has 100% confidence to retaliate after a first strike. My argument is kind of in between, and also some other scholars argue China's deterrence based on the so-called first strike uncertainty. That means make the other side uncertain of a successful first strike. This kind of uncertainty could deter. And Charles Glaser and Steve Fetter published article about U.S. damage limiting strategy against China. Their argument is China could reach the lower end of damage limitation, which means after a first strike, China could have 10 warheads survive and used for retaliation. Also, there's a RED report in 2015. They use the RED model, and their conclusion is that in 2017, China has medium confidence, and before that, China has low confidence about nuclear retaliation. I'm not satisfied because they use when they talk about the surviving warheads, they use expected value. I'm quite confused by this expected value. Anyway, here's the purpose of my research. First, I will build a simple nuclear exchange model and calculate the history and the future of China's nuclear deterrence, nuclear retaliatory capability, and we will discuss the implications for deterrence theory and for China-U.S. relations. Oh, it works. Okay, that's great. We will focus on the three scenarios and the future. The three scenarios are representative turning points in China's nuclear history. This is, I will focus on this one. In 1964, China detonated the first nuclear test. But it doesn't mean at that time China had nuclear deterrence or China had nuclear retaliatory capability. So until 1974, 10 years later, U.S. and the Soviet Union began to believe China has some nuclear retaliatory capability. But China is not confident. China was not confident at that time because that is the Cultural Revolution. 10 years later, in 1984, Chinese leaders began to be confident. Before 1984, no Chinese leaders talked about retaliation. You check the history of Chinese nuclear history. No leaders talked about that. Even in 1969, the China-U.S. border crisis, and the Soviet Union signaled a nuclear blackmail to China, and Chinese leaders never said that. Never said, if you attack us, we will retaliate. Never said that. But after 1984, Chinese leaders began to say, we have nuclear retaliatory capability. So this is 1984 is a turning point that Chinese leaders began to be confident. 1999 is a turning point in China-U.S. relations because of the embassy bombing. After that, China launched the huge, not just nuclear, defense modernization. Almost everything, every new weapons we see today begins in 1999. So the 2000, I use 2000 as a turning point in China-U.S. relations. And in 2010, the NPR said U.S. will maintain China-U.S. strategic stability. So we use 2010 as another turning point. And we will also discuss the future. So here's the assumption. My idea is to put all the assumptions and data, give all these assumptions, and we can discuss. Firstly, of course, all this research will use the publicly available data. And the second, I will use conservative assumptions for China. Maybe not, I prefer not to use the worst case, maybe not the worst case, but most of the assumptions will be conservative for China. And maybe some not. we can see. And only one attack will be considered because it's easy. This is the missiles. In 1984, the table gave all the missiles China had, but only the red numbers are considered in the models because we just consider those missiles that could target the adversary's heartland. That means for U.S. case, only the RCBMs, the real RCBMs that could target the continental United States are considered. That means the DF-5 and the DF-31A. The DF-31 is not considered. For Soviet Union, it's a little bit tricky because the DF-2 is how to say, the DF-2, the range of DF-2 is kind of 1,200 kilometers. Deployed in China, northeast China, the DF-2 could theoretically the DF-2 could target far east, a little bit area of far east Soviet Union. So I assume part of the DF-2 are considered. You know, at that time China has 50 DF-2s, but I consider just 12 of them could use for against the Soviet Union. This is the most interesting part of China's nuclear posture. I assume two kind of alert levels, one day-to-day alert and one fully alerted. But that means in peacetime, most of Chinese missiles are separate. Most of the Chinese warheads are separated from their missiles. So, and most of the warheads are kept in a special warhead base. And the missile bases just have some warhead. In my model, I assume is 1/6 of a warhead will be kept in missile bases. So basically, there are three. Let me see this. There are three kind of missile sides: the technical side, forward side, and launch side. In peacetime, most of missiles are kept in technical side, and only some of them are dispersed in forward side, and no missiles are in launch pad. So the alert level means most of missiles in peacetime are kept in technical sides, and in wartime, all the missiles will be dispersed to forward sides, and the warheads in fully alerted scenarios, all the warheads will be dispersed to missiles. Okay, this and we have a sensitivity analysis. This is a standard a brigade of Chinese missile units. A missile brigade has 12 missile launchers. This is a standard model for the nuclear missiles. One brigade has 6 battalions. Each battalion has 2 launchers. This is a standard model. Not all of them, just this is in my model. So I assume each missile has their own forward sides. I think we can show all the technical side and forward sides are tunnels, underground facilities. The launch sides are just a launch pad. So each missile has its own forward side, and each forward side has 3 launch pads. Basically, I assume if all the launch pads are destroyed, the missile could not be launched. This is a conservative assumption for China. This is the in principle the calculation of the probability of retaliation. So for alerted missiles, if you want to successfully retaliate, the side means the forward side has to be survive, and at least one launch pad has to survive, and during the movement survive, and survive the launch preparation time, and the missile is reliable and could penetrate U.S. missile defense. So this is for alerted missiles. And for off-alerted missiles, you have to the warhead base has to survive, and the technical base survive, and the launch pads, the launch pad movement, launch periodization, they're the same. And for silo-based missiles, a little bit either for warhead-based survival and the silo survival. This is in principle, this is the calculation. This part is difficult because how to know the detection probability of U.S. detection probability or Soviet Union's capability to detect China's missile sites? Actually, I tried hard to find a technical way, a mathematical formula to calculate this kind of probability, and then I realized it's impossible. So finally, I just give the numbers. It's my best guess. Follow these principles. The warhead base and the silos. I believe it's almost certain that U.S. could detect these sites. I say almost certain. I didn't use 100%. I used 99.99%. And I believe the technical side is the easiest to detect, and the forward side a little bit difficult, and the launch pads more difficult to detect. And the liquid missiles, because usually the liquid missiles need more trucks, like a large unit. A large unit has need like several tens of trucks to support one missile. So it's easy to detect. And solid missiles, relatively difficult. And the U.S. capability in 2010 is the same in 2000, and of course it's better than Russia in 1984. This is the basic principles. Here's about the assumptions about U.S. missile defense. I assume 4 interceptors will be used against 1 offensive warhead. 2 probabilities. One is the reliability of the interceptors. One is the target discrimination. The second one means you have to identify the real warhead from decoys. The first one means the interceptor could successfully destroy the target, identified target. So the reliability is said to be 50% because it's based on the test record of GBI. So the test record not so good. So I assume in 2010 the probability is 50%. And the target discrimination is very difficult. I don't know how good the US is. I just assume in 2010, not so good, it's about 10%. In the future, about 2025, I assume America will solve the reliability problems. You will have a good interceptor and a better discrimination capability. This is a result. This is give you the number of the probability of at least 1 warhead survive and be used for retaliation. This is easy to calculate. You can do that just use the Excel. You calculate the probability that all Chinese missiles are destroyed, and then you know at least 1 survive. So in 1984, for day-to-day alert, the probability is 84, pretty good. And for fully alerted scenarios, almost 100%. This is against Soviet Union. This is a little bit tricky because I think maybe I overestimated the Chinese capability because of the DF2 and DF3. I'm not sure. In 2000, because the only weapon China could use to target American is the DF5. The DF5 is silo-based and vulnerable. So basically, no matter it's day-to-day alert or fully alerted, the number is very low. And in 2010, because of the deployment of the DF31A, the survivability is much better, so the 39% and 90%. Here's the probability of at least 1 warhead survived. And when I give this talk in China, the most question I got is from my Chinese colleague is that why you use 1? Why? It means the 1 warhead, the criteria is too low. 1 is not enough. So we can we can say that if you use different criteria, this gives you the idea. This one, I do this one just by Excel. This one is built is done by our program. It's 1 million times. You just calculate, and the criteria of deterrence is the same number of this one, but it also gives you the different criteria. If you believe 5 is required to deter Soviet Union, then you can say the probability is 24% and 95%. If you believe 10 is required, and you can see the number. This is a China-Soviet Union case. And the 2010, I didn't calculate the 2000 because the number is too low. This is 2010. If you believe 5 is required to deter United States, then the probability is 6% and 1%. Here I do a sensitivity analysis. Because the model is based on a lot of assumptions. I pick up 2 assumptions, 2 numbers I believe it's important to do sensitivity analysis. First one is alert rate. It basically means how many missiles are dispersed in peacetime. I use the x-axis is the number of alerted launchers for each brigade. The baseline is 2. This is the baseline. For each brigade, we have each standard in my model. Each standard brigade has 12 launchers. So in my model, I assume in peacetime, just 1 battalion, 2 launchers are dispersed. What if the different numbers? So basically from 0 to 12. The 12 is the number for the fully alerted scenario. From 0, you can see for 2010 China case, the variation of the deterrence probability. And another variable is the kill probability of underground facilities. Because as I said, the technical sites and the forward sites are all tunnels. So to what extent U.S. could destroy these tunnels? I don't know. I believe these tunnels in a conventional war, it would be difficult for U.S. to destroy those tunnels. But we are talking about nuclear war. U.S. first strike against China. So my number is 80%. This is my baseline. But if you believe those tunnels are quite survivable or invulnerable, zeros. So it means it's impossible for U.S. to destroy these tunnels. China could get a pretty good deterrence capability. But if you believe these tunnels are quite vulnerable, then the number is quite low. This is for day-to-day alert case. We will discuss a little bit about the future, about the technology development, about the counterforce and missile defense. For counterforce, I discussed the U.S. capability to identify fixed facilities and locating mobile missiles and the ASW. From my perspective, I believe this one is easy, relatively. This one is easy, and this one is easy, and this one is difficult. Basically, the locating mobile missiles is difficult, but the fixed facilities are easy to detect. Why it's easy? Because I believe in the future, based on the artificial intelligence and hyperspectral imaging, I'm not a specialist on these technologies, but I believe this would be easier for Americans to do that. Because it took several years to build a tunnel. And Americans have lots of chances to detect those activities. And America has already have this kind of, this is just to give you an example that American have this kind of the HSI, hyperspectral image capability for military purposes. I think this one is also already retired. And this is an example of artificial intelligence, how to use artificial intelligence to detect the Chinese air defense sites. You just train a machine, a computer, and ask them to find all this kind of air defense satellites. This is difficult. This is different from the missile side because the air defense sites are not camouflaged. I believe the nuclear missile sites should have camouflage. That's why you need to combine both the HSR and AR to detect. So I believe for the long term, the balance is against China. It's in American favor. For locating mobile missiles, I believe it would be relatively difficult. If you want to detect mobile missiles, first you need to radar to detect for moving target indicator, and you need to automatically recognize the target. This is not easy to do. This is Q-Libre and Dial-Press work in last year. They built a model for North Korea. They believe America could deploy several drones to cover almost all the North Korea roads. This gives you an example about camouflage. You know, America want to detect the mobile launchers, and naturally China want to camouflage the launchers. This is a bad example of how you can camouflage a launcher. This is a name of a company's name. I don't know why the military did that, but anyway, this is an interesting picture. I mean, China military could do much better. Something like this. This is a work done by Libin many years ago. You know, simply you cover the launcher, and it's difficult for space-based radar or a UAV to detect and identify the launcher. And I think America would have a good chance for signal intelligence. For mobile missiles, probably you need to communicate with your boss. So, I think the signal intelligence could have a very good chance. But I don't have any knowledge about that. Also, the unintended ground sensors. Basically, America deployed these sensors in Chinese zone, and when the Chinese launchers pass by, and the sensors will detect and send a signal back. And the ASW, I'm not a big fan for SSBN. I'm not saying it's best. SSBN is a good idea, but the Chinese SSBN is bad because it's noisy. This is the American Naval Intelligence in 2009. I think Chinese summary is a little bit better, but how better we don't know. This report says this is still easier to detect. This is the Chinese first SSBN. This is the second, the currently, this one, the current one. The green means it's easy to detect. The red means very difficult to detect. Basically, the current SSBN is still easy to detect. So my argument is always with that China shouldn't deploy the SSBN if it's noisy. And this is the U.S. and Japan joint program to deploy sensors like undersea sensors to detect Chinese submarines. Basically, if your submarine is noisy, then these sensors will detect the rough location of your submarines. Then the U.S. or Japan could send anti-submarine airplane or attack submarines to search in a very small area to get you. Also, another problem for Chinese SSBN is that the SLBM, the missiles, the range of the missiles is limited. So if Chinese SSBN want to target the continental United States, the submarines need to get through the first island chain. You need to here to target United States. So basically, to get through the first island chain means get through this kind of the sensors is very dangerous. I don't think the chance would be very low, I believe. currently, it's reported that China is working on the JL3, the next generation SLBM. And the range is reported to be the 9,000 kilometers. 9,000 kilometers is still not able to target United States when the submarines in the Chinese coastal areas. This is 7,000. Even it's 9,000, you still need to get through the first island chain. So I don't understand why 9,000? Why not longer range? I don't know. So basically, my argument is China shouldn't deploy the noisy SSBNs. But it seems that Chinese Navy has different idea. Currently, China have 4 SSBNs, type 9094, and is building the 5th one. So maybe has already have 5. I don't know why. I understand if China want to build SSBN. You cannot build quiet submarines. You build noisy submarines, and then you build better and better. But I don't know why you want to build 5 noisy submarines. And I also believe it's dangerous because you can imagine in a China-U.S. conventional war, American probably have a temptation to repeat the maritime strategy against Soviet Union in 1980s against Soviet Union. Basically, the idea is that you hold the SSBN at risk and force the other side Navy to protect its SSBNs. So this Navy, these ships could not be used for other purposes. And it's very dangerous and escalatory. And finally, the missile defense. As I said, I assume in the future, America will fix the reliability problem, and the target discrimination capability will be much better. And the current missile defense review mentions the space-based sensors and space-based interceptors and boost-phase interceptors. Anyway, America will have a better missile defense in the future. This is my assumption. This gives you the rough idea of the impact of missile defense on China's nuclear deterrence. The red line is the 2010 level. This is, we can assume the 2010 level as a baseline for China-U.S. strategic stability. If America have a good missile defense, if the missile defense is perfect, hopefully not, then China's nuclear deterrence will be basically neutralized. This is the model for 2025. I assume in 2025 we have moved the DF5 and the DF31AG. This is my assumption. I don't know. I assume China will replace the DF31A with AG, just one by one. So the number is still the 1 brigade. No, it's two brigades. And China will deploy 1 brigade of the DF41, the new ICBM, mobile ICBMs. And we will have JL2, the SSBN. The result is quite roughly the same level of 2010. You can see the 92% and 40%. In 2010 is roughly the same level. If the criteria is 5, then a little bit higher. This is my understanding. Basically, this my conclusion is that in the near future, China-U.S. strategic stability will be maintained at the same level as 2010. So the implications for first, is uncertain retaliation enough to deter? The answer is yes. But the two terms about deterrence and damage limitation. If the United States, if in the peacetime, I believe uncertain retaliation is enough to deter. But if in a wartime, if Americans believe China is going to launch its missiles, then American leader might want to preemptively destroy these missiles to limit damage on U.S. So Actually, this is why China emphasizes the nuclear taboo, and China have no further use policy. So if this is my conclusion. I believe if Americans believe China is not going to launch its missiles, then the uncertainty is enough to deter. I don't believe like U.S. president will not just destroy China at the risk of losing a city. I don't believe that. But if the United States believe China is going to launch its missiles, then there will be a strong temptation to preemptively destroy China. The second about is this about the future? Is this stable deterrence in danger? This is again about the liberal enterprise argument. They believe in the future, the technical competition is always in the favor of offensive side. So the counterforce capability will be better and better. My response is first, the counterforce capability is not always getting better and better. It's kind of not how to say? It's kind of this way, not the linear way. The other side could always develop countermeasure technology against the counterforce. So let's say like Chinese SLBMs. Currently, America has very good ASW capability against Chinese submarines. But if the Chinese submarine get acquired, then American counterforce capability will decrease. Secondly, about the uncertainty. Even uncertain retaliation could deter, I believe. This one is about crisis stability, that the uncertain retaliation could deter. This is about the arms race stability. In the future, my concern is I'm confident that in the future, uncertain retaliation is enough. But my concern is that maybe because the uncertain retaliation is not significant, it could cause problem for both China and American. For American side, because China's nuclear deterrence is not significant, so it might have provide a temptation for American side to neutralize China's nuclear deterrence. So it seems possible to dominate China. For Chinese side, the nuclear deterrence is not significant. The Chinese leaders might not satisfied with that situation. And currently China has money, China has technology to build bigger and better nuclear forces. And naturally, the political leader will have a temptation to do that, to go beyond uncertain retaliation. This is my concern. I don't know the future. I don't know. So finally, this is a conclusion. First, Chinese nuclear retaliation has been and remains far from assured. I don't believe we have assured retaliation capability. Second, even a small U.S. missile defense has the potential to neutralize China's nuclear deterrence. This is interesting because U.S. missile defense policy is that U.S. missile defense is about North Korea, not China. Said U.S. missile defense can only deals with small North Korea ICBMs, not China or Russia. But if you look at the model that after a U.S. first strike, the surviving warhead, Chinese warhead, would be very limited. So even a small U.S. missile defense could have the potential to deal with that. So the problem is not about, the key factor is not about the number of the interceptors. The scale of the U.S. missile defense is about the effectiveness of U.S. missile defense, the discrimination capability. The interceptor, U.S. has enough interceptors to deal with China. Third, uncertainty makes sense. And lastly, mutual restraint required for China and U.S. to avoid arms race. Frankly speaking, I'm concerned with the last one. It seems that neither China nor United States wants to restrain. For United States, we just say we just saw the Missile Defense Review, the Nuclear Protocol Review, and emphasize the great power competition, something like that. For China's side, as I said, currently China have money and has capability. And China also has domestic interest groups like the military industry complex. Naturally you want to encourage the government to build more. And the hawks in China and in United States will help each other to build more. Yeah, I'm really concerned about a China-U.S. arms race. The arms race is not about the U.S.-Soviet Union arms race during the Cold War, not that style, but still kind of a small-scaled arms race. This is my concern. I stop here, and I'm happy to get your questions.